And ladies and gentlemen, for the inaugural session of the third Apollo Farm Power Awards 2021, I would like to invite on stage Dr. Ashok Dalwai, CEO NRAA and Chairman Committee on DFI. Let's put our hands together to welcome him. I would also like to invite Sri T.R. Kesavan, President TAFE Limited and Chair FICCI Agriculture Committee. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Inviting Mr. Sandeep Mathur, Group Head OEM and Institutional Business, Apollo Tyres. A very warm welcome to you, sir. And we have on the stage with us Dr. M.J. Khan. And ladies and gentlemen, our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Ramesh Chand, Member Niti Aayog, would be joining us shortly. Namaskar and good evening. Distinguished and eminent dignitaries on the dais, special invitees, distinguished awardees and delegates, respected members of the press and media, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the third Apollo Farm Power Awards 2021, which are being organized by the Agriculture Today Group in partnership and sponsorship by Apollo Tyres, Gen Irrigation Systems Limited, NABARD, Bayer, RS Enterprises, Tractor and Mechanization Association TMA, Federation of Seed Industry of India FSII, Agri Equipment Division ACE, Prasad Seeds, CARD, the Center for Agriculture and Rural Development, National Agriculture Consulting Group IACG, AgroCest and Labs Indigram. Ladies and gentlemen, if we were to name one sector that has withstood the assault of COVID, it would surely be the agriculture. It has been the only sector to clock a positive growth despite disruption of socio-economic activities. It is nothing short of a miracle that the agriculture industry worked committedly to support the nation during this pandemic. The flip side of this coin is that vulnerability of India's agri-food system was exposed, which accentuated the need for agriculture market reforms. The central and state governments have acted quickly to help the agriculture navigate the unprecedented crisis. However, the technology needs to catalyze digital solutions for connecting farmers to markets, and prompt measures are needed to reboot the sector and strengthen the value chain to ensure that we exit this crisis more resilient than before. As we are aware, many essential areas have taken into consideration by the government as long-term initiatives to make India a global powerhouse in agriculture. But a few critical aspects continue to need wise deliberations for realizing this vision. Agriculture Today Group embraces the opportunity to draft a blueprint on decoding opportunities post-COVID at the 12th Agriculture Leadership Conclave and Awards 2021. Strengthening the Indian rural landscape for easy and prompt adaptability of farm mechanization at the third edition of Apollo Farm Power Awards 2021. The last 2 decades of Indian agriculture have witnessed a paradoxical situation. On one hand, there are massive scale success stories and innovative agribusiness models. And on the other hand, natural resources are depleting, rural-urban income gap is widening, and farmer suicides continues unabated. A silver lining, nonetheless, is that educated youth understand the potential of this sector and are engaging in farm ventures and agribusinesses. A greater involvement of industry and institution is opening new vistas for farmers. India's leading magazine, Agriculture Today, has been a vanguard in disseminating information, influencing policies, creating business networks, and recognizing achievers, unleashing the potential of agriculture. The magazine scrutinizes topical and contemporary issues involving biotechnology, farm mechanization, seeds, fertilizers, farm credit crop protection, horticulture, animal husbandry, food processing, agribusiness research and extension, marketing, high-tech agriculture, and all key facets of the agrarian setup. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as a mark of respect to our great nation, may I request everybody to kindly rise for the national anthem.
भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you. Kindly be seated. I would now request Dr. M.J. Khan to kindly do the honors of welcoming our distinguished and eminent dignitaries on the dais with floral bouquets. We welcome Dr. Ashok Dalwai with a floral bouquet. I would request Ms. Mamta Jain, Group Editor, Agriculture Today, to kindly do the honors of welcoming with floral bouquets, Dr. Ashok Dalwai, CEO, NRA and Chairman Committee on DFI. A very warm welcome to you, sir. We welcome Sri T.R. Kesavan, President, TAFE Limited and Chair, FICCI Agriculture Committee. A very warm welcome to you, sir. And we also welcome Mr. Sandeep Mathur, Group Head, OEM and Institutional Business, Apollo Tyres. And we would also like to welcome our host, Dr. M.J. Khan. Thank you, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the proud privilege in inviting for the welcome address, Dr. M.J. Khan, President, Agriculture Today Group. Over to you, sir, for your welcome address.
Thank you, Sapna. Very good evening to all. Let me welcome on my behalf Dr. Ashok Dalwai, Mr. T.R. Kesavan and Mr. Mathur, and all the colleagues and friends sitting in the audience. Thank you very much for joining this evening, this program, and that goes on to till tomorrow evening, when we have Agriculture Leadership Conclave starting tomorrow at 9:30. So this is first event after almost 2 years. I think last we had was in October in 2019. So it's a good feeling of having from unprecedented crisis and kind of feeling that was that time whether the God has planned to wipe out this planet from the humans, that kind of deep anxiety, impression, unpredictability of what is going to happen and all that was there. So let us together thank God for helping us survive that crisis and being here together to see each other. Agriculture, if we see last 75 years since independence, and more specifically when we talk the agriculture in context and of course pre-Green Revolution era and post-Green Revolution era. Few trends are very definite and dominating the agricultural paradigm, but to a large extent almost every commodity either we have come to be the self-sufficient or surplus, except of course the oil seeds where we are about 12 to 14 million tons we are still importing. Rest all commodities we are either mostly we are surplus situation. In terms of numbers also, from the ship to mouth situation in pre-Green Revolution days to now godowns overflowing with the food grains. But it is not only the success story of food grains, and post-green revolution era, but greater success story comes from the horticulture sector. In the last 2 decades, horticulture has grown in leaps and bounds. Today, it has overtaken even the crop production. So, I think 320 million around tons is the production of food grains, while horticulture has gone 350 million tons, so few less or more. I am sure Dr. Dalwai and Dr. Ramesh Chand will be able to give very precise figures. Same is the story of dairy sector. Almost 2 million tons is the production of milk and milk products, and poultry also is a very big success story that we see in agriculture. Same goes with fisheries, some 7 to 8% is the annual growth rate. I was surprised, in fact, 3 years back when we had, or 4 years back when we had first round table on poultry industry, we were surprised to know, because I was estimating it to be an industry of 12,000-14,000 crores. 80,000 crores that time. Now it has crossed 100, 1 lakh crores is 100, 5,000 crores of industry, which is very sizable size industry. So almost every segment, if you look at over a period of time, we have been able to achieve these, targets, rather exceeding that, and new milestones have been set. But new challenges are emerging. We all know that the climate change and its impact on agriculture. And now that it's not a textbook story or some environmental lobbies talking, creating hype about the climate change, but it's real for us to see. 3rd week of October, heavy rains yesterday in Uttarakhand. 2 weeks back, I was in Jaisalmer. So from Jodhpur, some 300 kilometers driving down to that. Just after 50 kilometers, started heavy rains until we reached Jaisalmer, checked in the resort. Rains were going on, and so intense heavy rains as if we were in the Cherrapunji. So this is the kind of Saudi Arabia, snow falling, unprecedented. Similarly, 2 years back, I was in Europe, some 15 days tour, some 7 countries. One single day in Netherlands, Dalwai Sahab, 4.5 degree rise in temperature. I think some 40 people died that day. In Germany, France, is a situation unprecedented. We couldn't believe that any hotel we were neither had the AC nor the fan. Imagine what was the situation at 42 degree temperature. So the climate change is real for us to see now. Similarly, this year in Canada, in Vancouver area, the temperature rising to unprecedented. One cannot believe 50.5 degree Celsius. I forget the small town that highest degree temperature registered. So this is posing definitely a very serious challenge. Yesterday, I was in a Zoom meeting with the India-Iowa Council, India-Iowa Triple AC something, Triple IC, so India-Iowa International, something like that. Anyway, so Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Nag was also there, and his deputy Bill Northey was also there, and they were about, Professor Ratan Lal, the last year's World Food Prize laureate, he was also there. So about half the Indian population in that, about 40 people were there, and half this. So we greatly debated upon the, how severe is going to be the climate change impact on agriculture. Our country, despite domestic political compulsions, the Prime Minister went ahead and signed the Paris Accord, but much less has happened on the ground if you look at the how the farmers are being prepared. Even though there is a national initiative for climate change, climate resilient agriculture, NICRA, 2 weeks back, a little more, 1 month back, when this new environment minister, Bhupendra Yadav ji, he used to come in many of our programs, so I went to meet him. And we tried to impress upon him that very large scale farmers awareness sensitization program, in fact climate literacy programs need to be taken up. And only this morning we have little, written down a small note that how in a partnership mode with the industry and with the Environment Ministry and Agriculture Ministry, we need to actually organize district-wise massive scale climate literacy programs in order to sensitize the farmers, because adjusting to the new ways the agriculture has to be, and to make it more climate compliant, or what we call climate smart agriculture, is one big challenge before us, because 12.5% is what we are accounting for agriculture contribution. In fact, we are one of the largest rice growing country, and rice contribution to greenhouse gases, and then largest number of cattle population, so animal husbandry's contribution. So I think yesterday also there was a lot of concerns that people were saying that India need to take more solid steps as far as climate, that controlling greenhouse gases is concerned. Second very important aspect, of course, we achieved national food security about a decade back, or any period you can take depending upon where the line is drawn, or maybe 2 decades back. But individual level food security still remains a concern. But even if taken that under National Food Security Mission, we have been achieved even the individual level food securities, because such a large population has been covered. But the nutrition security, that's a big, in fact, future going to be a big, lot of work need to be done. Fortunately, year 2023 has been declared International Year of Millets. So, lot more focus is going to be on nutrition security, and that is where the big concern is there, because still, food security report, that Global Hunger Index report released by the Economic Impact a few days back, sponsored by Corteva, India is slipping down in the ranking. I think 101st or 102nd it has been ranked from where it was, 72 or 73 number about a decade back. So, we may claim by the data that domestic governmental data that national food security is there in place, individual food security, because large population is accessing that under National Food Security Act, but report after report is showing a very poor picture. In fact, comparing us with African countries rather than even the developing or backward Asian countries. So, that's second biggest concern, that how we should, because stunted growth of children on whose shoulder the future is to be built of our nation, how this kind of situation can be afforded by a nation which is otherwise food secure in all respects. So, nutrition security is a big initiative, and from ICFA that I chair, I think another 2-3 weeks time we are going to launch India Food and Nutrition Network. Third important aspect is this challenge side I am talking about, then of course the positive story also will little touch upon is the economic engagement of the youth, meaningful economic engagement opportunities, where either through the jobs or through the self-employment and so on. Because employment data that are showing up are not very encouraging. So, this is another challenge, that how in fact in the government the number of jobs are falling down. It is only the private sector which is a major job creator. In fact, 10 years or 12 years back we did 6 months monitoring of the new jobs coming up. So, I think 94% were the fresh jobs in the private sector, only 6% in the government, I am sure. Now, it must have come down to 96 versus 4%. So, largely it is the private sector, but that itself also does not make up the sizable number if you look at the country's population. So, largely it has got to be the self-employment opportunities, and agriculture sector, as all of us are convinced, is the largest job creator if you look at formal and informal, in fact more importantly the informal sector, and is also the largest number of entrepreneurs in agriculture. If we take farmers as the entrepreneur, in fact by any definition farmer is an entrepreneur, so is not a kind of bechara concept that we are having all these years. In fact, if you look at, he uses all the raw material, which is agri inputs, he puts in labor, efforts, land, all the capital, so all the 4 ingredients of what the entrepreneurship is all about. So, farmer is actual entrepreneurs. No matter how much knowledge we have, when we tell the farmer do this, he is more smart to either accept our advice or not to, and that is how a sharp entrepreneurs should be. But when we look at entrepreneurs, we normally look at a well-educated person and formally accessing the bank loan and doing some registration of the company and all sort of thing. Going by that definition, and if you look at more importantly, what is in great fashion nowadays is the concept of startups. 3 years back, and in Dalwai Sahib, you were there, we had All India Agri Startups convention at that hall opposite Krishi Bhavan. Some 300 startups had gathered, and very amazing model. In fact, one great thing happening in agriculture is that when the people not connected with agriculture are talking about agriculture, then it is actual glamour in agriculture. In fact, when the Agriculture Leadership Summit in 2008 we first time conceptualized, Professor Swaminathan that time was very active. Dr. Raman is here from his office. So, he was the chairman of the summit committee, 2 days program, and Governor Haryana was the chairman of the awards committee. So, we chose, decided that best of the hotel, best of the people, best of the arrangement, everything, so as to create attraction and a sense of glamour in agriculture. Some people were against it with the traditional mindset that when there are ICR halls are available, why you are choosing Taj Palace Hotel. So we told them that a story of dilapidated, barbad ho gaye kind of thing, that negative stories are too many already being talked about. Let the positive stories be talked about. And therefore, if you want to attract the people in agriculture, and that is when the real capital formation is, when the people not connected with agriculture get into agriculture, or for that matter in any sector. So then the real unleashing of the potential happens, and this is currently happening in agriculture sector. In fact, if 10 years back, often I said so, that 10 years back, maybe 20 years back, if I was traveling, the next seat somebody asks, hello, I am so and so, picking out a visiting card, and I am saying I am so and so, my visiting card. The moment something agriculture written, he was unimpressed. He would continue reading magazine or whatever. 10 years back, he would talk to me a few minutes time. Now, if he knows that I am from agriculture sector, till the time plane actually lands, he will not leave me. He will start asking what we can do in agriculture. So a lot of curiosity. So that change has happened. When the collective minds are applied, very new, amazing things happen. And this is what exactly currently happening. Out of about 1,500 startups, I am sure thousands are by IITians. Of remaining 500, maybe 400, again by engineers or people are from some other profession. Hardly 100 out of 1,500 must have been started by the agriculture graduates. So when the people not connected to that sector, when they come into that, lot of innovative ideas, in fact, very objective thinking, they can look at the opportunity from all respects. In fact, we get seized with the problem. We are not able to look at so objectively the problem and therefore, of course, the opportunity. Because every problem is an opportunity of its own size. Bigger the problem, bigger the opportunity, and that is how people are looking at that agriculture sector is dominated by a lot of gaps and distortions. Each gap and distortion is an opportunity of its own size. So this was required for a long time. So this is one very amazingly good thing happening, that currently a lot of startups are making huge success. This process is only likely to be accelerated. At national level and more importantly in the government, if we talk about, we have been seized with the production mindset. Maximize production has been our mantra for the last 7.5 decades. Maybe rightly so, but 2 decades back we should have changed our priorities, or at least mindset and thinking from being production centric to post production. That is where the need for more working on agri businesses, more on market opportunities, more on trade, more on logistics, and these are and more importantly the services sector. I am happy tomorrow there is a session on agriculture services. In fact, last 10 years the services in agriculture sector have come up in a big way. In fact, 20 years back I remember that Indigram Labs Foundation, ISAP chairman Sunil Khanna, and we used to, good friends, his team is also here. We used to discuss कि agriculture में कुछ हो नहीं रहा, तो I said Sunil wait, it's a matter of 10 years or 15 years, you will see massive level happening in agriculture, and I was so correct in my prediction. So today the services in agriculture, otherwise in the name of services there were only extension functionaries by the state government. Today you have a lot of investment bankers, the equity analysts, the consulting services and so on. Even contract research organization, private sector are coming up. Advertising agencies specializing, HR agency specializing, so many new subsectors have come up. So I believe that rural sector and more importantly the agriculture sector, which was very deficient. In fact, 10 years back there was a study by the Planning Commission, that time it used to be Planning Commission and more powerful a body, that spent of the farmers on services is lowest among all inputs. In fact, it was just better not to be zero. So actually, services and knowledge both put together there was a study. So if the spend of the practitioners of agriculture sector on knowledge component and services is as good as zero, it was not zero just by very small numbers. So then we can expect that the continuity of what my grandfather was doing, what my father was doing is likely to be that. So therefore, fortunately, that extension services and more importantly the IT companies getting into agriculture. In fact, today we also have one working group on IT in agriculture, so about 40 companies are part of that. Now every IT company is interested. In fact, we have one MOU in place also with NASCOM. Every IT company is looking for opportunity in agriculture, and rightly so, because this is one sector which promises a lot of returns, and that is one sector where services concept has been absent, so it is time actually to build. So in future, I am sure that trade and agri businesses, unfortunately that there's 3 acts that have been passed. There has been, communication deficit led to the trust deficit, leading to the, apprehensions, leading to the agitation, resulting into withholding the bills. If that had been implemented, there will be, no matter this side or that side, there will always be merits, demerits. Some people may come up with some apprehensions, maybe वाजिब होंगे. बट अगर एक्ट इम्प्लीमेंट होते तो आई एम श्योर कि अभी थोड़ा सा और एक्सेलरेट होता वो प्रोसेस जो बहुत टाइम से रुकी हुई है और जो मार्केटिंग रिफॉर्म्स की ज़रूरत थी उस एरिया में बढ़ने की ज़रूरत है. तो देयर इज़ अनदर स्टडी विच सेज इफ ₹1 इन्वेस्टमेंट ₹1 you invest in production side you may get ₹4. ₹1 you investment in post production side you may get ₹15. So the return on investing in post production, which is in trade, business and so on, because 4 months of hard work that farmer puts in, he gets, let's say, ₹5 a kg. Let's take any commodity, let's say tomato. But the trader, in 4 hours that he puts in, he makes double of what farmer makes in 4 months' time. So I hope that connecting farmers more effectively with the consumer through digital technologies and whatever marketing support programs and platforms are possible, I am sure that better pie of what the consumer spends comes to the farmers' share, because nowhere in the world and in no industry in India there can be 400% profit, which is what in agriculture is. So therefore, I think those reforms that were needed for a long time, it is time that these are taken up earnestly and with all, policies, support and thinking going into that to make sure that consumer is better able to make best out of what he spends for, and the producer farmer is able to get best of what he invests. So these two, I think, together will have to get fairer part of the pie that producer of what consumer spends, and of course consumer must get better of much cheaper than what the producer gets. So the middleman who takes away 300, 400, 500%, of course it's not their profit all the time. It is actually losses and wastages that are there in the supply chain. So therefore, both supply chain and also if you look at value chain, while India is the second largest economy in agriculture, China is about $1 trillion or little more. US is still less than $300 billion. We are, maybe this year we may be touching $500 billion, half a trillion. But value addition is very small. In fact, US, some $300 billion economy that leads to a $2 trillion of food economy. But here, the value addition is so low, 500, close to half a trillion agriculture economy, maybe another $100 or $150 billion added in that when it comes to the valuation or the assessment of the food market. So therefore, very little, and therefore tomorrow there is a session also, supply chain management and value chain management in agriculture. I hope some good ideas come up. And evening there is a seminar where some ministers from the state should be sharing their political vision of what needs to be done for the farmers. I think I have taken longer time than what I should have in my welcome note. Let me thank you all again. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, we are expecting Honorable Chief Guest any moment now. Meanwhile, I would like to invite Shri T.R. Kesavan, President, Tractors and Farm Equipment Limited and Chair FICCI Agriculture Committee, to kindly do the honors of addressing the August House present here. Let's once again put our hands together to welcome.
Thanks a lot. Respected Mr. Dalbhai, Mr. Khan and Sandeep, I think there's one thing I can definitely say, that after MJ Khan's talks, I think I have very little to talk. No, I think he covered a larger area of the agricultural spectrum in India. And first of all, let me congratulate him and Mamta and the team for doing this along with Apollo, this awards function on a regular basis. I think what really makes the change for me is that I think I have seen people getting enthused to bring in something new, some innovations, which is very different than what we see. See, there is one or two points. I'm not going to talk a lot today because I think we are going to have a couple of sessions which we are going to cover the details. See, there is a very interesting thing Mr. M.J. Khan talked about. He talked about agriculture and as a farmers and agripreneurs or entrepreneurs and removing the distortions what was in the past by technology. I personally feel that the technology, farmers are accepted the technology much more than what we believed they will do. And one of the biggest challenges was in the COVID time. And that is the time we are really worried that how are we going to reach the services to the farmers. And interestingly, all the providers are inputs. I mean, I'm not talking only for the tractors, but every single provider of the inputs, whether it is seeds or fertilizer or pesticides or tractors or equipment, I think almost every one of them actually utilize the ability of the digital technology to reach the farmers. And what people don't realize, everybody thought that I can tell something to the farmer digitally, but is he going to work digitally? See, there are two different aspects. I can only tell you, I can give you one example which comes from our heart, especially we did this in TAFE, so I thought I can definitely share it. See, both the COVID times, we ran free tractor rental to farmers. We did that in Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh, some select markets. What we did was we connected the people who have a tractor to the fellow who wants a tractor, and it's an open thing. So it's more like it's like a Tinder. I mean, that's the right example I have to give. So if you are a renter, you know that so many rentees are around you, 5-10 rentees. If you are a rentee, you know so many renters are around you, and then they talk and settle it. So that's a normal model. We don't charge for it. So that was working in 17 states. And interestingly, we are going to launch it on an all India basis along with the minister. We have been discussed that. He said we can make it as an all India model because if you do a CSR that farmers doesn't pay for it. That's a regular model. And if I remember right, 35 lakhs of tractor farmers have already utilized it across India in the last 2 years. What we did during COVID was ensuring that every farm work it has been done by a renter is digitally mapped and the entire payment to the farmer renter went digitally. So when we did close to more than 2 lakh acres, which we did in the last season, and let's say at least 50% would have been averaging 1.5 acres because we concentrated only on very small farmers because they are the people who don't get mechanization help. Because big farmer does not want to go there or they don't want to say that, oh, baad mein pay karega, he is not willing to accept. But here the payment was, and we could ensure, that's interesting, but after doing the complete digital mapping, because the private company is paying. So the accounts will not clear a single payment unless they know that all the data is in place. So we mapped every single work we did. I have one of my colleagues who have done the work here today. Every single farmer has been mapped, every renter has been paid, underline that, every renter has been paid a DBT transfer into his account within 7 days of completion of the work. So normally what happens is a renter normally gets the money after the harvest. So he goes to somebody who understands that, okay, ये बंदा मुझे पैसा देगा. But छोटू मोटू farmer को उसको भी भरोसा नहीं है पैसा देगा क्या ना देगा. So when the minute becomes immediate, and it was very interesting that the majority what we covered this time was anything between 1 acre and 1.5 acre. So this, I'm not saying this because this is something which happened or we did it. It is saying that you cannot underestimate farmers. They are capable of utilizing digital. If they think there is a benefit, I think that is the most important thing. If they think there is a benefit, I think they will love to utilize it, number one. Number two, one request is, Mr. Khan talked about, actually you are giving me points, thank you. Mr. Khan talks about production and post-production, and we talked about concentration on the post-production. Definitely, we only have 4% conversion of the grains, etc., into value-added products, maybe 3 to 4%. But I have some bigger problem. Even in the production cycle, I don't think. Yes, welcome, Mr. Ramesh and Saab. So, thank you. So, even during the production cycle, I genuinely believe technology need to play a very important role. See, for me, there are 6 elements which cost the farmer. The items which cost the farmer are definitely the seeds, the fertilizers, the pesticides, water. People don't even consider water as an expense, power, and not spoiling the soil. If all the 6, actually 5 farmer pay immediately, water he doesn't even know whether it's paying or not, but you have a problem tomorrow he's stuck, and the damage to the soil he actually handles maybe 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road, or maybe generations afterwards. So these are the 6 elements. So my request is, if you can control these 6 elements and reduce the input cost, I'll call it an input cost, this goes directly into the farmer's pocket. Because he does not have to depend on a middleman, he does not have to worry about MSP, he hamara bachat hai, so he saves it. So I think that is a huge amount of technology needed here, which I think it is coming, but I think there is a need to fast track it. That is one. So this is one area I genuinely believe has to be done, and also storages, which we normally call as farm head storages, which we had it. I don't know, when you look at our old homes, see, you may call it Jamindari system, you may call it, or the, any kind of system, but what had actually happened there was, almost the large houses who were having this, they always had a storage. And the storage, I remember storages where people used to store paddy for 3 years, not spoiling it. So a proper, wooden, in our side it was wooden, probably in north would have been different. See, today in fact, I asked this question to the warehousing team, that do you really have an account of the old storage facilities in India? Can this be converted into storages which is near the farm? I mean, close to the farm storages as a stopgap. So this is an area I think we need to really think, and the digitalization, sir, is absolutely making this possible to track it, convert it, utilize it. I know there is one startup trying to do it now. Maybe a few more startups will come, but I think this can be one thought to be looked at. Then, of course, the other areas I think we will discuss much more, and we have much higher level of experts. I think with Mr. Ramesh and there, I don't want to stand between him and the team. But the only one last request I have is technology. See, today if somebody says I did an agricultural engineering or agricultural study, I think I talked about it in some other time, that today agriculture, mechanization of agriculture is also just not mechanical anymore. Anybody who wants to do a great job in agricultural mechanization, precision, he needs to know about agronomy, specific crops. He needs to know today, unfortunately, he needs to know IoT, he needs to know sensing. So today the whole profile of agricultural mechanization engineer is changing, and changing very fast. So unless we have an educational system to back that up, an educational system what I call as do not drive looking at the rear view mirror, because rear view mirror we have been fantastic scenes, but the forward we are having problems. And I genuinely feel that that is a change India need to bring at the earliest, so that future technology in agriculture will become a game changer. And we also have our own responsibility for the small farmer. So let me stop here. I think details anywhere you're going to discuss in the 1 or 2 sessions thereby. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for that wonderful address. And ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and privilege to welcome as an honorable chief guest, Dr. Ramesh Chand, honorable member, Niti Aayog. And may I request Dr. M.J. Khan to kindly do the honors of welcoming our honorable chief guest with a floral bouquet. Thank you very much indeed, and a very warm welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, as is customary, we begin an auspicious occasion by lighting the ceremonial lamp. I would request our Honorable Chief Guest and other dignitaries to kindly do the honors of lighting the inaugural lamp and formally inaugurating the 3rd Apollo Farm Power Awards 2021. I would request Ms. Mamta Jain, Group Editor Agriculture Today, to kindly join in the dignitaries for the lamp lighting. And ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as the 3rd Apollo Farm Power Awards 2021 have been formally inaugurated. Ladies and gentlemen, as they say, the diya when lit emits light and derives energy. Each wick being lit and passed from one to another symbolizes the sharing of knowledge. And each wick being lit today is a prayer for the agriculture sector and solidarity. Thank you very much indeed for doing the honors. And ladies and gentlemen, we now play a short audiovisual film by Apollo Tyres.
ना डरे तू बुलंद तू किसान टूटे मिट्टी तेरे आगे ले ले नई पहचान कुदरत से लड़के भी जीते हो कृषक बड़ा बलवान कुदरत से लड़के भी
दमदार पकड़, परफॉर्मेंस और 3 साल की बिना शर्त वारंटी के साथ अपोलो कृषक गोल्ड।
हो कृषक बड़ा बलवान।
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, from Apollo Tyres, we have on the stage with us the Group Head OEM and Institutional Business, Mr. Sandeep Mathur. And may I invite you, sir, to kindly say a few words. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome.
Dr. Dalwai, Dr. Ramesh, Dr. Khan, Mr. Keshwan, members of the jury committee, and members also of the organizing committee, my dear friends. From Apollo, once again, it's our pleasure and honor to be part of this event, to be associated with the Agriculture Today group in this particular activity. I think compliments to all for bringing the subject of farm mechanization to this scale, and I'm sure this will surely help in taking the right place to the farmers across our country. I think farm power, as it is called, I think if you really ask me, this is something which is to do with giving power to the farmers, which are the most important assets for us in our country, and helping them with the right kind of tools and equipment is helping them with their productivity and efficiency. So a little bit about Apollo Tyres, what we are doing in terms of on this particular drive. So I think Dr. Khan spoke about segments of horticulture and paddy being as the big sectors. So we take pride in saying that we are the ones who have developed tires, especially for these kind of applications. We know as the market is moving towards the specialized categories, we are working with the farmers and the community around with us to make sure that we have the right solutions with them so that they gain from the most of the various applications they are in. We also have introduced our radial tires. We firmly believe that technology in terms of radial tires is much superior as compared to the regular bias tires which are there. And we always had a discussion internally that if a radial tire is available for a premium car manufacturer, then why not the radial tire be available to farmers for their ag use. So this is something what we have developed locally and we are now offering to our various customers. And also from a brand point of view, so all of us know that it's about our farmers in India and also around the world. So we have both Apollo and the Friedrichshain brand, which are being offered to customers in India and global markets. And the last thing probably I'd like to say is on the service side, we are doing a lot of activities. We have opened up a chain of farm retail zones on the same lines as the PV zones across the country. The entire idea is to give customer the kind of enriching experience, equipping those zones with the right kind of equipment and machinery where there are automatic machines and equipment for changing the tires, for alignment and various other activities as such. So we feel that those kind of activities are something which should be given to the customers in the farm segment as such. So I think overall level, we are trying to align ourselves to the growing need of the market and the customers as such. I would not like to say much because, you know, the dignitaries on the stage are experts in this huge domain. So from my side, I would like to wish all the nominations the very best and look forward to a great evening.
Thank you very much indeed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the proud privilege in inviting to address the August House Dr. Ashok Dalwai, who is CEO, National Rainfed Area Authority and Chairman, Committee on Doubling the Farmers' Income. So please put your hands together and welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. The chief guest of this evening, Honorable Member of the Niti Aayog, Professor Ramesh Chand, Dr. M.J. Khan, Dr. T.R. Keshavan, Shri Sandeep Mathur, all the distinguished invitees, chairman and members of the jury, and all the honored awardees, friends from the media. Once again, good evening to all of you. I would take this opportunity to share a few of my own thoughts, and maybe I'll begin from where Mr. Keshavan left. He was talking about the use of farm power. And then Dr. Khan talked about the surplus food production in this country and the paradox of nutritional deficiency, and several other issues were brought up. And when we looked at the short video on the Apollo tires, it showed a tractor plowing a huge agricultural land. When we put all these thoughts together, the first thing that comes to my mind is that the very name farm power, which is the subject of this award ceremony, does not really represent the whole agriculture. When you talk of farm, we are mostly talking of land. When you talk of agriculture, it includes several subsectors. And when we talk about farm power in relation to the farmland, we are talking about one small segment of the entire agricultural value chain. the paradoxes and ironies that were highlighted and that continue to be highlighted, all are symbolic of the inadequacy of our own thought process vis-a-vis agriculture. If we have surplus on one side and deficit leading to imports of oil seeds, and simultaneously nutritional deficiency leading to health problems at the consumer level, and overarching the poverty of the farmers, all this is nothing but symbolic of the absence of the ecosystem that we needed to bring to agriculture system. So if we are talking about an ecosystem, it means that we should be looking at entire agriculture through a new prism. If we are talking about agriculture as an enterprise, naturally it has to be looked at from one end to another end. So to begin with, it is appropriate that we change the name from farm power to agricultural power, or farm mechanization to agricultural mechanization. And the specific point that Mr. Keshavan made, that farm power, or let's call it as agriculture power, does not anymore mean mechanical power, which has driven industrial revolution for last 200 years. And in the last 20 years particularly, that the power that is driving the industry and service is not mechanical power, but the new power called the digital power. So if we are looking at all these things, it only means that we need to have a change in the way our research and development is organized, the way our agricultural education system is organized. Because they are the two sources from where the knowledge emerges, whether it is agronomic technology, plant breeding technology, genetically modified technology, or the post-harvest management technology. All these things ultimately have their sources in the way our agriculture universities train their graduates and the way our national agriculture research system looks at the research and development perspective. If we had great leaders in agriculture research who have ensured that today India is food surplus, at least in terms of carbohydrates, today the new leadership is expected to drive the post-harvest management. Why I would like to talk about the post-harvest management in preference to the production technology is that agriculture itself is now expected to deliver a new mandate. Agriculture so far, through the thousands of years, has been mostly mandated to produce food for the people, fodder for the animals, and maybe some fibers for the people. But today in our country, where we have a huge youth population, their single aspiration is a gainful employment. Where do we generate the gainful employment? Is it going to be in industry sector? Is it going to be in the service sector? Or is it going to be in the new knowledge sector? Yes, these sectors will certainly produce more and more of employment. But the number of jobs that these sectors are capable of producing will not be commensurate to the population that is demanding for jobs. And the two reasons are that market is not as open as it used to be a few decades back for the Western society. Today every country produces, so everybody has to compete with everybody else. We don't have an accessible market like the Western society had. And more importantly, the emerging technology, the information technology, the IoT, WOT, the artificial intelligence, geospatial technology, all these things are disruptive, but simultaneously they are not going to generate the same number of jobs as those disruptive technology generated in the 1980s, 90s and 2000s. Which only means that the industries, service sectors are not going to be able to generate so many jobs as to absorb the surplus manpower that is already there in agriculture. And if that is going to be the case, the major demand for our country is to be generating employment. And if we can generate gainful employment, not disguised unemployment, not underemployment that agriculture is full of, only then will we be able to generate enough incomes. So employment and income are the two eyes that we should be looking at for a new welfare in our country. And according to me, that will come from agriculture. And a new agriculture, an agriculture which is remandated with two primary objectives of generating employment and incomes. And that brings us to the issue that we should be now looking at a bioeconomy, a circular economy, wherein the new industry and new service sectors will look at agriculture as the new mines field, where the bioresources will be generated adequately to serve the feedstock for the industries, whether it is the fuel energy sector, whether it is the biomaterials or bioenzymes, or all the new things that are required for the modern civilization must be all linked to agriculture, forestry, etc. And if that is to the case, what kind of a new production matrix should we adopt in our country? A new production matrix where yes, we produce enough food and nutrition to meet the basic requirements of our people, but simultaneously reorienting the production system itself to produce non-food items, so that those non-food items become the new feed sector, whether it could be simply poplar tree, for example, a bamboo tree, timber, or many other things, which can then become the feed material for our bioresources, bioeconomy. The bioeconomy advantage is that it is not end-of-term economy. It is a circular economy. And today, when our resources, whether it is the iron ore, or the coal, or the bauxite, or the copper, those mine fields are almost seeing a near end. The various estimates show, for example, in our own country that we may have coal resources for another 800 years. World over, that is the story. So if that is the story, those resources, the hydrocarbons built over millions of years are being exhausted within 200 years, 300 years, 1,000 years, or maximum 2,000 years. What is going to happen to the economy thereafter, the civilization thereafter? So biologically produced commodities in the agriculture sector, in the oceans, in the forests, are something which can be felled, used, and again planted. So I can say that it is the bioresources generated on our farms which are going to be the new mines field for the new industries. And the big advantage is it is a win-win situation. It is win first for the farmers, for the entrepreneurs. Today the farmers are hit by surpluses in certain segments. And if there are surpluses, there can be no equilibrium of prices in the market. The prices are bound to dip to the disadvantage of the farmers. So if we can create a new market through new demand, if industry is going to be a new demand center and not just the mouths of the people, not just the mouths of the cattle, then we will be generating a new demand, and therefore the farmers will have a new opportunity to sell their commodities at a better price. And the second one is from the ecological perspective, where the use of fossil resources generates more of greenhouse gases. Not that agriculture does not. Yes, agriculture also generates. But yet, the greenhouse gas emission, whether in the automobile sector or in the steel plants or this kind of automatic industries, is bound to be much more than what we see in other sectors. So if we are going to link our industry to this agriculture, then ecologically also I think we are entering the domain of mitigation. The point of telling all this is simply this, that if we need to generate employment, we need rural industrialization. That's where the people live. And we need not take our industries from the rural segments to the urban segments, where if agriculture is going to be the new mines, the basic business management tells is take your manufacturing to where the raw material is. And if the raw material is there in the rural sector, in the farms, on the farms, in the forest, then we can take our industries to that place. That is, once again, we are spreading the industrialization and therefore generating employment for the rural people. So rural industrialization is what is required. A rural industrialization will generate employment, will stop distress migration, will help us to manage our basic resources, drinking water, space, housing, and all other associated amenities for our society much better. And look at that sociologically. in metros, whether it's Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore, there's so much of anomie. Nobody knows one another. Whereas in a rural society, you can maintain a better sociology, a better habitation environment. So I think we have a better opportunity if we can link industries to agriculture, decentralize that, and generate employment. The last point I would like to say is that it is possible for us to organize these industries along different scales. It need not be only mega scale all the time. It can be micro, it can be small scale, it can be medium scale, it can be large scale, it can be mega scale. So depending upon the sophistication of technology, the ability to invest capital, the ability to train our people, we can organize our industries at different scales. And today with digital technology, it is possible to even have decentralized, fragmented production systems, whether in agriculture or in industry, in a very economical manner. So that means even small farms, a marginal farm, or a cottage industry, or a small-scale industry can still become viable, unlike what we thought was so in 20th century, because we can connect them using the digital technology. And I think that's the new power that we have got. So I would end up by saying that we need to look at agriculture through a new prism, and therefore whether it is not just input management, it is output management, and not in isolated manner, but as a continuum. So the last point that must be highlighted is, if India is producing surplus and still there are people who are not healthy, it's only that means we are not looking at food as a food production, we are not looking at it as a food system, we are looking at the food production. Food production alone is not enough. Food system will take care of production, and then its storage, transportation, retailing, etc., such that the food is distributed properly according to the demands. And then it is not just food but nutrition. So this is where I will stop, and thank you very much. And I'm sure over the next 2 days, we will be able to bring new points that will show a new way to agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the proud privilege in inviting for the inaugural address our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Ramesh Chand, Honorable Member, Niti Aayog. Ladies and gentlemen, let's once again put our hands together to welcome our Honorable Chief Guest.
First of all, I want to congratulate Agriculture Today group, in particular Dr. Khan and Madam Mamta Jain, for two things. One is that they are continuing with this agriculture conclave for the last 12 years, despite the fact that the group doesn't have any regular source of income. And you look at the standard of event which they organize, the way they organize. So sometime I really used to wonder that how Dr. Khan is arranging her sources for organizing this kind of event. This event is important for two reasons. One is that they inspire and encourage achievers in different fields through leadership award in wide-ranging areas related to agriculture. And secondly, if you look at the list of topics which are discussed in 1.5 day conclave, they are really topical. They are not theoretical issues, nor they are just redundant issues or beaten issues. They are the issues which you will find are of current importance, which are bothering our mind, which need to be addressed, which we are also debating in Niti Aayog, Ministry of Agriculture, that how we address all these issues. Second is that those of you who read Agriculture Today, I get a complimentary copy. Thank you, Mamta ji. And you will find that it contains very valuable information. We have a lot of technical magazines, journals in agriculture, progressive farming, etc., etc. but the kind of publication which deals with overall development and policy and politics of agriculture, I don't find that in India we have any magazine which is totally focused on this kind of thing. You may find article in Economic and Political Weekly that in a 2 or 3 times in a year they will come with a special issue on agriculture, but they are scholarly articles. They are not meant for general public, and many a time you have to remove leftist content also from those articles. But this agriculture today is very balanced, and they keep an eye on what is happening in parliament, what is happening in power corridors, internationally, and they publish their own opinion, and also article taken from different people. I think, Khan Sahab, that would be your sole source of income. I am not aware of any other regular source of income for your organization. Coming to agriculture, I think it is important that I talk a little bit about agriculture also. Though Dr. Ashok Dalwai has gone ahead of me, because earlier he was working in irrigated agriculture, now he is working in rain-fed agriculture. And when you work in rain-fed agriculture, you deal with more difficult challenge. So you become a tough farmer in rain-fed agriculture compared to irrigated farmer in irrigated agriculture. So I think he has gone ahead of me in understanding complexities of issue in agriculture, because he held several positions in the government. I briefly want to draw your attention to just 2-3 things. One is that I am not using this term as a cliche, but I feel it is important to highlight that agriculture today is really at the crossroads. It is not for sake of saying that it is at the crossroad. It is really at the crossroads. And it is very important for future of this country that which direction we take from here. Do we go back? Do we go on the same path under business as usual? Do we go forward? Do we go left, right? Which direction we take? That is very important. And this is important because of 4 reasons, and you understand, most of you understand those reasons. I will elaborate only 1 or 2, which may not be that known to this audience. One is that in last 50 years, we have single-mindedly focused on grow more, and grow more. Because the situation in which we started, that demanded that we grow more, situation of scarcity, situation of starvation. So those scars of scarcity and starvation are so strong in our mind that we are clinging to this grow more motto very strongly and very dearly. We do not want to deviate even little bit from that. But a realistic planner is the person who is rooted in the past, but who also look at present and futures. That okay, single goal of grow more made sense when India was having so much scarcity of food, but today, when India is having 10% of its food in excess of what is the actual demand, should we continue to focus on grow more with the same emphasis, or we should change this emphasis? So I feel that that some statistics you might have read from my paper, that in early 80s we were producing 1 kg food per person per day. But today we are producing 1.75 kg food per person per day. despite increase in population, that much change has happened. And if our population demand 1.75 or more, then there is no problem. But our population is demanding only 1.63 kg food per day per person. That is the situation. So what do we do with this remaining 0.12? It has several implications. The most important implication is that we must sell it in international markets, or we should make Indians so rich that they shift their diet towards costly food, they start consuming much more like other countries. I am saying all these things based on empirical evidence, but culture of Indian is such that dietary transition in India is not happening the way it has happened elsewhere. Elsewhere, what happened when your per capita income increase, people move in a big way from plant diet to animal diet, animal-based diet, egg, meat, like that. So in that process, the demand for cereal increase at a much faster rate, because you will require 3 to 8 kg of grain to produce 1 kg of meat, depending upon what kind of meat is consumed. So you find that cereal demand start increasing rapidly when per capita income of people increase at a faster rate. This is what happened in China, this is what happened in many other countries. But in India, it is happening at a very slow rate, at a very slow rate. And per capita intake of cereal, not only consumption, intake overall, even if you consider feed, etc., is not rising. In some cases it is declining, in some cases it is static. So if it is static and you use 3,000, 4,000 liters of water to produce 1 kg of rice, natural resources, you use soil fertility, you also cause greenhouse gas emission. Should you continue to produce more and more, or you should draw some level, decisive level, that we should be growing, not as in the past, but as is our need and as it is justified, without doing damage to the future generation. So there are many kind of challenge. There is challenge from demand side, there is challenge from the side of natural resources, that in the past we wanted to address hunger, so we did not care what we are doing to our future. So for short-term gain, we sacrificed our future. We sacrificed water table, and India today acquired the notorious reputation of a country which is the highest exporter in the world of embedded water. Embedded water, water that goes when you sell your food, also goes with it. So India is the largest exporter of embedded water. And we are having highest growth in those foods which are water intensive, and we are exporting them, and we are importing those foods which are water friendly, nature friendly, and which require much less water, like pulses and oil seeds. So we have reached that situation. If we have abundant of water, this was not a concern, but you all know that what is the situation of water, and we need to do something to that. Like this, there are so many challenges. Maybe some other occasion we will get to discuss only challenge, one occasion to discuss only opportunity, and like that. Then on the other hand, after we are able to address scarcity, as Prime Minister emphasized 4 or 5 years back, can we shift our goal post from increasing production to increasing income of the farmers? And earlier, increase in income of farmer was secondary, primary was increase in production. Can we reverse this game? That increase in income is primary and increase in output is secondary, because still our production is growing by 3%, population is increasing by 1.34%. We can afford to do little bit trade-off there. So this is one area, and this also provide us many new kind of opportunities. Those kind of opportunities are evident if you look at changes in demand pattern. Today, some consumer are willing to pay even 100 rupee per kg for wheat atta if they get the atta of the desired attribute, that it contains desired attribute. So you find that there are people who are willing to pay 100 rupee per kg. Some atta is selling even more than 200 rupee a kg. So you just find that opportunities for selling the produce are changing. The way opportunities are changing, I sometimes used to caution people that India is heading toward a dietary divide. That dietary divide means demand by elite who don't mind what is the price, but they want some attribute in the food. Demand by masses whose purchasing power will not be high, who will always be depending upon bulk sales of produce, not caring about what are attribute, etc., etc. So this divide, like today many people buy organic food. They don't mind what price they are paying because their income is so, not even 1% they are spending on food. But ordinary consumer who spend 40-50% on food, he cannot think of organic food because he cannot buy food even for 5 days with his income if he has to go for that kind of costly food. So all these things will give rise to a differentiated market, a market where food is leveled and all those kind of things. Whether it is desirable or not, I am not going into that. But this is something which is going to happen, and that is going to offer different kind of opportunity. Farmers who want to take up these opportunities, or farmers who do not want to take up this opportunity. Then there is third evidence available that if you look at degree of intervention by government in a different set of commodities and growth rate of those commodities, you find a clear inverse relationship. This small chapter is published in the report of not less than institution like 15th Finance Commission. I wrote it. So it is published there that higher the intervention by government in a set of commodities, lower is its growth. You can look at it. Minimum intervention is in fishery, and last 7-8 years, growth rate of fishery is between 8 to 10%. Then comes your dairy sector. There is, I am not aware of except 1 or 2 states where this price support or subsidy kind of thing on food, on milk is there, and growth of milk is very low there. But at all India level, if you look at the support given to dairy sector, you will find that other than institutional support of dairy cooperatives and what government is required to give in terms of infrastructure, etc., health of animal, you don't find much direct support by government. So that comes second, and dairy growth rate is more than 5%. Third is mainly fruit and vegetables, where again, whatever general kind of subsidy that water is free, it is free for every crop, or fertilizer is subsidized, it is subsidized for every crop. But in terms of price support, etc., there is no intervention by government. A little bit for namesake market intervention scheme is there, but it hardly has any effect. So you find that fruit and vegetable growth rate is between around 3 to 4%. Then you come to rice and wheat, where there is so much intervention by government, so much intervention, and growth rate is not even 2%. It is not even 2%. So clearly there is an indication that power of demand is much stronger in terms of incentivizing farmer, then what is the power of government support which can be given? Between the two, that demand is much stronger. So in future, do we have to prepare our farmers to take benefit of demand factor, or we want to increase their dependence on government and remain permanently dependent on government and not use their entrepreneurial skill, etc. That is other thing because of which we need to think of change in agriculture. One more thing why we need to change agriculture, why we need to think of that, no, agriculture is a sacred sector, it is a holy cow, we don't want to change at all. The couple of reasons for change is, there is no sector today where you are not seeing rapid changes. You pick up any sector, you name any sector, I can tell you what is changing there. For example, energy. Bird first talked of solar energy and wind energy, but today the maximum investment are happening in hydrogen energy. You know, green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, and those kind of things. So you read this week's Economist and you will find that what is the vision of those people who deal with energy, that by 2030, by 2050, what will be the largest source of energy? All this coal and hydropower, these kind of things, according to them, will be gone. So you see the kind of change which is happening. You see the way trade is done. There are new method of doing the trade. You look at medical science, you look at space science, you look at anything, you find that things are being done totally in a different way. But there is a added reason for change in agriculture, and that added reason is that aspiration of farmer and aspiration of those who depend on agriculture are not same which were there earlier. Their aspirations are also changing. Now, if you want them to meet their aspirations, can we meet their aspiration if we continue with the cultivation of ordinary crop, if we continue with cultivation of even MSP, if the farmers get, do you think it will meet their aspiration? You will find the big answer is no. You can do calculation, big answer is no. So what to do? How we raise the income? Either we do agriculture differently, or we allow some alternative sources of income to the farmers, or we use combination of all these things. These are not small challenges, these are big challenges, but the answer, solution to these challenges will not happen if we are not willing to change. So that is what toward the end Ashok Dalwai also alluded, that we need to look at with a different prism. So I will say, yes, we need to look at with a different prism, we need to look at with the open mindset, and we need to look at everything, how it is for our situation. Like in today's award, I was just reading that it is mentioned farm machinery for efficiency and precision. So we all know why precision is important. If 60% of nitrogen that you are giving to crop does not reach the crop, so if through precision you can increase it from present level of 30% getting available to plant to say 50% getting available to plant, why not? If you can go for nano urea, where one small bottle is serving the purpose of what one bag will serve, why not? So I feel that we need to think these kind of things also. And when you will discuss in today's session, like when I was cursorily looking at the topic listed for discussion, I find they are very, very important. But still what is left out is more important. So we need to discuss that also. That it is not only precision which is important for machinery, it is not only efficiency which is important. The scale is also important, that how a small farmer can afford to keep machinery, how he can afford to reach a break-even point. Till recently, India did not produce tractor which was less than 25 or 30 horsepower. And the break-even point for economic use of that tractor is something more than 10 acres. But we have 50% farmer who are not even having 1 acre of land. So there the issue of services will come, which is subsequently listed for discussion, that a farmer need not own tractor, but we should have a system where he can have services of tractor, like Ola, like Uber, that you need not own the car, but you can always use it the way you are using elsewhere. So you find that there is a servo sector mentioned there. So I find that these topics are listed very carefully in a sequential manner, and I hope you will tax your mind and you will give your suggestions. Many of you are stakeholders also, and something good will emerge out of this conclave. Beside honoring the achiever and inspiring others to get this award next year, and I will be eagerly looking forward to recommendation coming out of this conclave. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for that noteworthy address. And your encouraging presence today reinforces our commitment to the development of agriculture and recognizing its contribution towards achieving the $5 trillion economy for India. And may I now invite on stage once again Ms. Mamta Jain, Editor and CEO Agriculture Today Group, to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude and appreciation to our eminent dignitaries on the stage. We have a small token of gratitude from Agriculture Today Group and from Apollo Tyres. We present to our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Ramesh Chand, Honorable Member Niti Aayog. A green initiative from Agriculture Today Group and a small token from Apollo Tyres. We now present to Dr. Ashok Dalbai. Okay, we have Mr. Sandeep Mathur from Apollo Tyres. I would request him to kindly do the honors of presenting the token of gratitude from Apollo Tyres. To Shri T.R. Kesavan, and to Mr. Sandeep Mathur. Thank you very much indeed. Thank